The 2026 WNBA season might not happen, and the reason isn't the players. It's a secret deal sitting on Herb Simon's desk right now that he refuses to sign. He's 91 years old. He's worth $5 billion. He owns the Indiana Fever. And he just told Caitlin Clark and every player in the league, no. Here's what almost nobody is talking about. Everyone knows Herb Simon owns the Indiana Fever. But what most people don't realize is that Simon doesn't just have one seat at the table, he has three. He owns the Fever, which gives him a vote as a WNBA team owner. He owns the Indiana Pacers, which gives him a second vote as an NBA owner. And he was part of the league's capital raise, which gives him a third stake as an investor. Three separate financial interests, all controlled by one man. Think of it like this. Herb Simon is sitting on three sides of the same negotiating table. He's the owner, the investor, and the landlord. And every time he votes no on player pay, he gets paid 3 times. That's not speculation. That's the structure of the league. And right now, with the entire 2026 season hanging in the balance, Herb Simon is one of the most powerful people deciding whether Caitlin Clark will play basketball this year or sit at home. And just a few days ago, one of Simon's own players went on a podcast and did something nobody expected. She named the best owners in the league: New York, Seattle, Phoenix. She praised them by name. And when it came to her own team, her own owner, silence. Not a single word. That player was Sophie Cunningham. And what she said on her Show Me Something podcast on February 3rd should terrify Herb Simon. She said half the owners in the WNBA are, quote, player first and wanting to invest. And the other half? She called them league side. Then she was asked which owners actually put the most into their teams. She named Joe Tsai in New York. She named Matt Ishbia in Phoenix. She named the Seattle ownership group. She did not name Herb Simon. She did not name the Indiana Fever. Now think about what that means. A player currently on the Fever roster, sitting in the Fever locker room, wearing the Fever jersey, just went on national media and told the world that her own owner is not one of the good ones. And here's what makes this even more dangerous. Sophie Cunningham is a free agent next year. She just went on a public podcast and insulted the man who signs her checks. Players don't do that unless they know the ship is sinking. That doesn't happen unless something is very, very wrong behind the scenes. And the numbers prove her right. Here is what Caitlin Clark will be paid for the 2026 season. $85,873. That's it. $85,000 for the most marketable athlete in women's basketball. The woman who sold out every arena she walked into. The woman who generated millions in ticket sales and merchandise. $85,000. Now here's the part that should make your blood boil. Because the league just got handed a check for $2.2 billion. And the players? They're being offered less than 15% of it. Let me explain what's really happening. The old agreement between the league and the players expired on October 31st of last year. Since then, the two sides have been negotiating a new one. And the single biggest issue? Revenue sharing. How much of the money the league makes should go to the players who actually play the game. The players proposed a system. They want 30% of the league's gross revenue. That means 30 cents of every dollar the WNBA brings in before anyone starts subtracting expenses. Under their proposal, the salary cap would jump to around $10.5 million per team. The maximum salary would be $2.5 million. The average player salary would be roughly $1 million. The league's response? They came back with a completely different system. They offered players over 50% of net revenue. Now that sounds generous until you realize what net means. Net means after expenses, after the league deducts whatever it wants to deduct. And when you do the math, according to Front Office Sports, the league's proposed share for players still does not meet or exceed 15% of total league revenue. 15%. That's the deal. The players said give us 30%. The owners, including Herb Simon with his 3 separate stakes, came back and said, how about less than 15? That's the offer he refused to match. That's the deal sitting on the table right now. And every day it stays unsigned, the 2026 season gets closer to falling apart. Multiple sources told Front Office Sports that if a deal is not done within the first 2 weeks of February, the season will be delayed. That deadline? It's right now. To understand why Herb Simon is willing to risk the entire season, you have to understand who Herb Simon actually is. He was born in 1934 in Brooklyn, New York. His father was a tailor who emigrated from Central Europe. Simon and his brother Melvin moved to Indianapolis, and in 1960, they founded what would become Simon Property Group, one of the largest shopping mall companies in the world. By 1983, the Indiana Pacers were about to fold. The team was on the verge of being returned to the league. Herb and Mel stepped in and bought the franchise for $11 million. They literally saved basketball in Indiana. When the WNBA expanded in 1999, the Simons added the Fever to their portfolio. After Melvin passed away in 2009, Herb became the sole owner of both teams. He's been the longest tenured owner in the NBA for over 40 years. He was inducted into the Basketball Hall of Fame in 2024. And here's what you need to understand about his mindset. Herb Simon is a real estate man. He thinks in terms of property values and long-term equity, not in terms of player happiness, not in terms of fair wages. He thinks about what the franchise is worth. And right now, keeping player costs low protects his investment across all three of his WNBA stakes. But there's a twist. Because Simon didn't just refuse the players' deal, he also helped block something that could have changed the entire league. And it involves a $325 million offer that mysteriously disappeared. Last summer, a man named Steve Pagluka offered $325 million to buy the Connecticut Sun and move them to Boston. It would have been the most expensive sale of a women's sports franchise in history. The Sun's owners, the Mohegan Tribe, agreed to the deal. They presented it to Commissioner Kathy Engelbert. And then nothing happened. The deal never reached the Board of Governors for a vote. Engelbert reportedly sat on it and let the exclusivity window expire. When another buyer, Mark Lasry, matched the offer to keep the team in Connecticut, the league blocked that too. The Connecticut Attorney General accused the WNBA of, quote, wrongfully blocking a sale. Now, why does this matter for Herb Simon? Because Simon sits on that Board of Governors, and when franchise sales go through at record prices, it sets a precedent. It puts pressure on every other owner to invest more, to spend more, to justify their team's rising value by actually putting money back into the product. Simon doesn't want that precedent. Not when the Fever was valued at just $90 million by Sports Illustrated. Not when he's trying to keep costs down across the entire league. Here is where things stand as of right now. On February 7th, the league finally sent a new proposal to the players after 6 weeks of silence. The salary cap went from $5 million to $5.65 million. They made some concessions on housing for minimum salary players, studio apartments. But on the one thing that matters, revenue sharing, according to multiple reports, the percentage barely moved. It still doesn't hit 15%. The Players' Executive Committee is split. There's a real debate happening right now about whether to call a strike. They voted 93% in December to authorize one. The union president, Nneka Ogwumike, said publicly that they have the strike in our back pocket. Meanwhile, the league released the full 2026 schedule like everything is fine. Opening night is May 8th. Training camps start April 19th. The expansion draft for Toronto and Portland still hasn't happened. Free agency hasn't started. 80% of the league's players are unsigned. And Herb Simon? The man with 3 stakes in the outcome? He just retired from Simon Property Group on February 4th. He's 91 years old. His son Steve is taking over more of the day-to-day operations. And the question everyone in Indianapolis should be asking is, does this man care enough about what happens next to actually make a deal? In 1983, Herb Simon saved basketball in Indiana. He stepped up when nobody else would. He put his money on the line and he kept the Pacers alive. Now, 43 years later, the question is whether he's willing to do the same thing for the women who play for his franchise. The deal is on the table. The players are waiting. Caitlin Clark is waiting. The clock is running out. And Herb Simon still hasn't signed.